This RealAg Radio episode podcast is brought to you by high-performing carbine insecticide from FMC. Carbine insecticide delivers fast, selective, and extended control of aphids in alfalfa and pulses, leaving beneficials like lady beetles to help in the fight. Ask your retailer or visit ag.fmc.com/ca today.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. And, of course, big shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast as well. Well, today we're going to talk about the Canadian election. What is happening? Where are we at? We are about the halfway point here. We're going to be joined by Ryan Jesperson of Real Talk. He is a great YouTube show and podcast out of Edmonton. Ryan does a fabulous job of collecting political viewpoints on all ends of the spectrum. I'm going to be actually on his show, Real Talk, on Thursday morning, talking about some agricultural issues to the general urban audience, so to speak. So Ryan's going to join us here and talk about some things. We got a product spotlight with ADAMA, and looking forward to that. We're going to hear from Dr. Terry Griffin. He is at K-State, which many of you will know it that way, but Kansas State University. We're going to talk about farmers and the relationship to technology in times here like 2025. A little bit tighter times on the financial side of the equation from a cropping standpoint. And Dr. Griffin was going to join us. I was able to do a fireside chat for an hour with him at the Ad Farm Voice event here in Kansas City, Missouri, where I'm broadcasting from all week. And then we're going to hear from Tyler McCann of CAPI. He's going to be joining me with Elisabeta, Lika, who is one of the research associates there. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the AAFC cuts that potentially could be made, and maybe just a reorganization of the financial affairs there. And lots of departments are going to be going through this, okay? And what does that look like in the agricultural department? What needs to happen? Where does there need to be an increase for spending, and where does there need to be some cuts? And what is the systems approach that could be taken on that process? Okay, so if you have any feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Hey, let's take a break. When we come back, we got Ryan Jesperson of Real Talk right after this. We've got some exciting news. We have a new episode of the Pest and Predators podcast. It's going to be starting here very shortly. Joined right now to chat all about it, the University of Alberta PhD student, Rachel Pazante. You know, we've been doing the Pest and Predator podcast for a number of years now, but from your perspective, how would you explain it to the listener?
This is a chance for researchers to share their research, what they've been working on, with a broader audience and with the people who might actually benefit from the research.
What does the audience have to look forward to in season 6 of Pest and Predators?
Well, my episode, we're going to talk about hoverflies, as well as other beneficial insects that live in field borders surrounding canola fields.
It's kind of fascinating because we talk a lot about getting inside the canopy, and we talk a lot about beneficials. And I think a lot of times we think about the crop, think about the pest. We don't necessarily think about the whole ecosystem. That's the Pest and Predator podcast, powered by WGRF. Those episodes are going to be coming out here very shortly. We'll be talking about them here on RealAgriculture.com.
Every seed starts a story at Alliance Seed. A seed holds the promise of successful harvest each year, from the first day of planting as your crop grows and navigates the challenges of weather, to the final load from the last field. It all begins with the seed you choose. Trust Alliance Seed to guide your choices by providing the expertise and information needed to match the right seed to your farm's unique potential. Start your success story with cereal and pulse varieties by visiting allianceseed.com.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Hey, farmers' trust is everything. Genesis Fertilizers is making real progress toward providing reliable, locally produced fertilizer. Join the ownership group and protect your bottom line. Learn more at genesisfertilizers.com/credibility. Well, I'm looking forward to this. We've had him on the show before, and really one of the big voices on current events, politics, everything that's happening in the province of Alberta. It is Ryan Jesperson of Real Talk. Hey, Ryan, how's it going?
Hey, Shaun, it's good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Hey, how's the show going?
Yeah, I mean, gangbusters right now. Obviously, I think, like you said, we talk news, politics, and pop culture. So anytime that there's a federal election, let alone a new American president, let alone a full-blown trade war, you got a lot of eyes and ears on what we're doing. But I had a chance. Look at this, shamelessly name-dropping 30 seconds into my appearance on Real Agriculture. I'm name-dropping, but I was talking to Ian Hannamansing the other day, and I said, cool. Ian, this is what we wake up for. So it's been great.
Good stuff. So I guess, what have you been hearing from your audience about this election? We've things have really been turned around. We have a situation where it looked like it was, the Conservatives were, a 25-point lead. Mark Carney is chosen or elected as the Liberal leader, becomes Prime Minister. He all of a sudden is in the leadership position. It looks like it could be a majority government for the Liberals after all we've experienced the last 8 to 10 years. What are you hearing from your audience?
Yeah, I mean, well, one of the things I think that I really love about our audience and the type of show that we've built, Shaun, is that while we have largely a Western Canadian audience, we talk about it as kind of a podcast with a prairie lens. We do have real talkers, we call them, that join us either on our live stream or later from all across the country and from all across the political spectrum as well. And so we've got left-leaning progressives. We've got a lot of folks who I think, we describe them as centrists, or maybe we might even describe them this federal election as undecided or swing voters. And then, of course, we have ardent conservatives. And so depending on who you talk to, you'll get a very different assessment of the political landscape right now, like you're talking about, though. I mean, I'm guilty of it too, Shaun. Like, we put ourselves out there on our talk shows, and for the last 2 years, ever since he sold like 300,000 new memberships, doubling the membership of the Conservative Party of Canada, and fundraised way more than anybody probably thought was possible at that time. It's all been talk about the Prime Minister in waiting, Pierre Poilievre. And he had a very effective campaign against Justin Trudeau, who quite frankly sort of saw his legacy kind of start to campaign against himself. It was almost the same thing that happened with Stephen Harper back in 2015, not comparing the leadership styles, not comparing the policy, not even comparing where the economy was at when both leaders saw that sort of wavering of their support. But 10 years is a long time to be Prime Minister. 10 years is a long time to be at the top of the pile of anything, corporate leadership or otherwise. And so I think obviously Justin Trudeau was experiencing some real challenges to his leadership. And we were talking at one point to pundits who suspected that the Liberals could even lose official party status.
Yes. Yeah.
And they may have fewer than 12 seats in the House of Commons. In comes Mark Carney in an absolutely dominant performance in that leadership race. I'll try not to take too many off-ramps in our conversation here, but isn't it interesting? Pierre Poilievre sweeps to victory in the Conservative leadership. Mark Carney sweeps to victory in that Liberal leadership. Even Naheed Nenshi, for that matter, in the Alberta NDP leadership, sweeps to victory. The only one prominent or relevant in our conversations, really, that had to really gut it out or fight in the trenches for her leadership win was Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith. You'll remember when she won the United Conservative leadership over probably the favorite-ish, Alberta's former finance minister, Travis Taves. It was a bit more of a nail-biter. But we've seen these big leadership wins, and I guess everybody wondered, with Mark Carney coming in with the credibility that he has, and again, you'll get different interpretations of that as well. I think for some folks, his greatest assets are in other folks' eyes his greatest or biggest red flags. His time as a banker, his Ivy League education, his time as the governor of the Banks of England, the Bank of Canada, and that. His rubbing shoulders with the billionaire class, as we see the Conservatives attacking him on. But clearly, Carney was able to do something. I don't know if it was a Jedi mind trick or what, but as he's sort of commandeered this change narrative, the former economic advisor to Trudeau, now kind of the face of the change, so to speak, of the Liberal Party, enough so that, like you said, pollsters are giving the Liberals a real fighting chance of a majority government. I'm keeping my powder dry right now on predicting who the next Prime Minister of Canada is going to be. Shaun, we're less than 3 weeks out. We're about halfway through.
It's a long time, though.
Right now. And honestly, man, I don't know who's going to win. I said it on Real Talk a couple episodes ago. You could tell me Carney won, I wouldn't be surprised. You could tell me Poilievre won, I wouldn't be surprised. And it's not that I'm afraid to make a prediction. I just think that the two parties are so close, and for that matter, a lot of their policies are so close right now that I think a lot of Canadians are waiting to see what they see over the next couple of weeks before actually making a decision.
Yeah, because I'll say it. Carney has borrowed a lot of what Pierre was going to do or said he was going.
The word you're looking for.
Well, essentially stolen. It's kind of come down to a bit of a personality test, and that is that is a bit of a weakness. No matter what you think about Pierre Poilievre, his mark has always been he's that pit bull, he's that agitator. And at the time where we have President Trump, the Liberals have done a very good job of making those centrist or undecided Canadians sort of think, man, he kind of is a little bit Trumpy, even though he's really not. If you get into the policies, he's not that, in my opinion. But boy, he is marked with that, and that's hurting him.
Well, and who hurt him more than Alberta's premier, Danielle Smith, going on a Breitbart podcast and saying that, Pierre Poilievre and his policies, most closely resemble or most closely align with the new direction of America, as Poilievre's campaign team is trying to convince 35 million Canadians that he does not align with the new direction of America. So I think that's been an interesting story to follow, maybe the liabilities within the conservative movement in Canada. But you're right. This is, and we talk about this all the time, whether it's, Albertans will go to the polls in the fall again to elect city and town councils across the province, and people will be asking in many of those circumstances, because we're probably going to see some turnover, maybe some significant turnover in the big cities in Calgary and Edmonton, for example. But people will say, who comes across as most mayoral, right? They know that these cities are in economic trouble. Edmonton's in real economic trouble right now at the municipal level. Who comes across as mayoral? Who strikes you as most premier-like in a provincial election? And in this case, who comes across as most prime ministerial? And I think that one of Pierre Poilievre's biggest assets, he's a formidable debater. Probably nobody's better at the three-word campaigns than he is, right? Yeah. What is it? It's the formula: verb, the noun, right? Axe, the tax, or whatever it is. Defund the CBC. He's been able to sort of like out-slogan everybody else, but like you said, with an unpredictable and quite frankly incomparable U.S. president, nobody's quite done global politics like Donald Trump is doing right now, and that's not necessarily a compliment. I don't think that even some conservatives, except for maybe the most ardent ones, believe that Pierre Poilievre can out-Trump Trump. And so I think that people are looking for, who's the statesperson that can sit at those tables and best represent Canada. And that's probably why Carney's been able to fight the Liberals back to where they are.
Well, some of the mainstream have made this big deal. I've heard a few political analysts say that, Poilievre's been held captive by the, as one person put it, the Maple MAGA, that, there's this, Trump supporting group inside the Conservative Party that has not allowed Pierre to pivot. I don't see it that way. I actually just see it as pure stubbornness, that they've had a hard time pivoting. It was all about the carbon tax. It was all about Justin Trudeau. And all of a sudden it wasn't about the carbon tax and it wasn't about Trudeau. And they didn't move. They didn't pivot fast enough. I don't think it has anything to do with anybody that supports Poilievre that may also think Trump's a great leader.
Yeah, I don't know. Everybody's seen the photos, and I bet your audience, and I bet my audience as well, Shaun, has differences of opinion on whether or not it was an asset or a liability for Pierre Poilievre to deliver donuts to the truckers during the Ottawa occupation or whatever.
Oh, no, that's hurt him. Oh, no. So full stop. That is hurt. In southwestern Ontario, eastern Ontario, that the convoy still lives in terms of how strongly he did or did not support it. 100%.
Haven't you noticed, though, when's the last time you heard Mark Carney bring that up? Or when's the last time the Liberals have mentioned it? It's almost like they haven't had to, because it's just through the association of the bigger picture, right? Of how, the Venn diagrams of how many of those. And listen, I'm not going to take anything away from many Canadians, especially during that time. Feels like an eternity ago, but COVID ravaged a lot of folks' bank accounts. It was taking its toll on a lot of people's communities and families, and still has to a certain degree. And I know a lot of people participated in that convoy as an example out of a sense of desperation. Yeah. And I think I've always wanted to be careful and gracious and empathetic and also candid when I look back and reflect and talk about that. But I do think that with Pierre Poilievre in that circumstance, like he took a risk at the time, and I think it paid off because, in the short term, he was looking to build a movement, and maybe he was looking at influencers these days like Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson and how they've built these massive audiences, these almost disciples, and how have they done that? What have they tapped into? And Poilievre tapped into something. And now maybe some of those chickens have come home to roost, and maybe he's dealing with the consequences of that. But I haven't seen the Liberals rolling out those photos as much as I thought they would, because I think everybody kind of just knows that this isn't so much about anything other than Donald Trump. That's what this election's about.
David Coletto, though, from Abacus, talks about how it is about President Trump, but it's not that. It also is about affordability. It's still a factor.
It has to be.
But if we're going to, if you're willing as a Canadian voter, in my opinion, to forgive the Liberals for multiple, and I mean multiple ethics violations, and some of the thing in the financial mismanagement, and there's a lot of things to be critical of them for. If you're willing to let all of that slide, I think it's okay to say Pierre. Like let the convoy, delivering donuts slide. Like, to me, those are in two different total camps. It's very interesting the way Canadians have reacted to this, and clearly, again, I think there's a bit of a cultural. And here, it feels like you're interviewing me here, but it's a little bit of a cultural thing where Canadians like nice, and Mark Carney just seems a little bit nicer right now than Pierre does, right or wrong. It's a fascinating election. And I'm fascinated by your show because, like you said, it is similar to ours, where we have people on all ends of the spectrum. People that love supply management, people that hate supply management, and everything, just on that issue alone, right? I'm looking forward to, on Thursday morning, I'm going to be on your program. So how do people check it out and make sure they can tune in?
Well, we're really looking forward to having you on there, and no pressure, Haney, but we've referred to you as the preeminent and strongest voice for Canadian agriculture on planet Earth.
Wow.
And so, people can check out RyanJesperson.com, Jesperson with 3 E's. They can find us on all the social platforms at Real Talk RJ, or search Real Talk Ryan Jesperson on YouTube or wherever they get their podcasts. We'll be live at 8:30 a.m. Mountain Time, 10:30 Eastern, or later on demand. And I'm looking forward to it as well, because, Shaun, you're 100% correct. While this is an election about Donald Trump, and while probably Donald Trump would qualify as the so-called ballot box question, right? We've seen elections in past. Jason Kenney let Albertans know in 2019, for example. That was an election about the carbon tax. That's what that one was, as Kenney presented it, and it proved to be so. And obviously the Conservatives swept to victory there. The ballot box question here has changed, and it has become Donald Trump. And I think that Pierre Poilievre and his team, as smart as they are, or as smart as they have proven and capable as they have proven themselves to be, they've been unable to see this new threat coming, and that is the threat of a resurgent Liberal Party that has, you're right, convinced Canadians to forget about many of the reasons. Shaun, if you looked at or talked to people about why they felt the way that they did about Justin Trudeau, and why his popularity was plummeting, was cratering, like it was, there were so many different reasons that people would present, but the Liberals were able to effectively, with this leadership contest, throw the baby and the bathwater out, because the baby was the biggest problem there, right? So out goes the bathwater, not to suggest that there's not a lot of that same old Liberal guard surrounding Mark Carney. It's a lot of the more familiar names. But I think that you haven't brought in a candidate that was kind of like if it was Chrystia Freeland, if it was Anita Anand, if it was Sean Fraser, if it was Jonathan Wilkinson, if it was any of the prominent Liberal cabinet ministers that people could draw direct lines to Justin Trudeau, then I don't think we'd be seeing this. And I think that's also why Carney won in resounding fashion. Off the top of my head, I think it was 86, 87% on the first ballot. I mean, he walloped the field. And sure, he was Trudeau's economic advisor, but he was also appointed governor of the Bank of Canada by Stephen Harper. And maybe he's been able to convince some people. Maybe having been born and raised in Edmonton has helped his cause on the prairies. I don't know. I don't think, honestly, that moves the needle that much. No. But I do think you make a very strong point in that there's been something about his campaign. And I do think a big part of it as well is the credibility that comes with his resume and his experience sitting around big negotiations, moving around billions of dollars, sitting in executive corner suites, having a job outside politics. That kind of stuff resonates with people when the number one thing they're thinking about is Canada going to be able to preserve trade agreements or to be able to get better deals with new export partners? And that's the top issue right now. You're bang on about affordability. Notice nobody, and I mean this respectfully, but nobody's talking about the environment this election. People aren't even talking about other issues.
Exactly.
There's been some talk about housing because for millions of Canadians, that is their day-to-day concern.
100%.
John, if you can't find housing or you can't afford housing or you can't afford groceries because those costs are up and your housing costs are up, or if you've had to uninsure your car or sell your car because you can't afford to drive it anymore, your kids aren't playing soccer this summer, or you're not taking your family on vacation to the water slides because you can't not only pay for it, but also you can't afford the interest on the cost of borrowing if you were to put it on your credit card. That for some people, yeah, climate change is a thing. And we're all familiar with what happened in Jasper and Lytton, BC, and we've seen all the evidence. But for a lot of people, and your ag producers that listen to the show, you talk to them, they're very well aware of these types of the impact of climate change as well. But for a lot of people, the concern this election is today, tomorrow, and the next day.
Yeah. Same thing in the U.S. election. It showed. I care about climate change, but I need to be able to pay my bills. That's
right now, this Friday.
Exactly. Hey, Ryan, this has been fantastic. Really appreciate it. Everybody tune in to Real Talk on Thursday. Going to be joining Ryan on his show, and always has great discussion, great discourse from all the political sides of the spectrum. Ryan, thanks a lot for joining us here today on RealAg Radio.
Thanks, Shaun. Great to see you.
Hey, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio right after this.
Right now, people in agriculture and food are facing challenges that can feel overwhelming. If you need to talk, access the National Farm Crisis Line at 1-866-FARMS-01. That's 1-866-327-6701. It's 24/7 confidential help when you need it. Farm Credit Canada also has tools to support your long-term mental health. Learn more and access the crisis line at fcc.ca/wellness.
Get all the information you need to keep your pulse crop healthy and profitable with the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School is a free YouTube video series covering agronomy, research, and more across a host of different pulse crops. It's also available as an audio podcast wherever you download or stream your favorite podcast. Check us out on YouTube or visit RealAgriculture.com. The Pulse School, brought to you by BSF Canada.
Through a growing storm of kosher, cleavers, chickweed, and more, there's a clear path. Introducing Oxbow, a versatile cereal broadleaf herbicide that gets the job done. Powered by Duplisan technology, Oxbow is your workhorse on resistant kochia and other tough weeds. With flexibility in timing, rates, and recropping options, your path is clear. Find your way on the path of least resistance at newfarm.ca/Oxbow.
And welcome back to Real Ag Radio. It's now time for a product spotlight with ADAMA, and we're joined right now by ADAMA's technical sales agronomist for Alberta. It is Michaela Lobay. Michaela, it's great to chat with you.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about Maxentis. And it launched for application last season in 2024. Tell us about what growers had to say about it.
Yeah. So just a little bit of a recap. So like you'd mentioned, Maxentis was launched in 2024, and we had excellent results with it. In 2024 season, the focus was on canola. We were looking for sclerotinia control, and then we were also looking at it in peas for a number of different things like Ascochyta, Mycospirilla, and white mold. Maxentis is a unique formulation of a group 3 and a group 11. So it is azoxystrobin and prothioconazole mixed together in a unique formulation. It is an EC formulation, and it is unique in that it has azorbitol, which is a unique solvent system to ADAMA that kind of enhances, or we're seeing a great difference in performance in the field having that azorbitol in there.
If you don't mind me asking, what's an EC formulation?
It's an emulsified concentrate, so it's just how those active ingredients are suspended within that solution.
I asked for everybody listening.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair.
I appreciate that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we did have it getting applied this past year, kind of depending on the geography. Some areas definitely got a little more rain than others. So in those areas where we were seeing rain, we had really good success with it. Overall, growers really like the handability and then obviously the performance of the product in the field.
Yeah, and the product, it does address two of the most devastating diseases for canola growers and their crops. So blackleg, sclerotinia. What does it, I guess, considering that, what does it mean for growers in 2025?
Yeah, so that is kind of what has changed for 2025. So in 2025, we have launched it, or we have now added the registration of blackleg control. So that wasn't on the label in 2024. So that is one unique thing that has changed for this 2025 season. So we are kind of a perfect solution for that canola acre. We have both blackleg for that early season disease, and then we also have it when you're going in at flower for that sclerotinia timing.
But one application, not two, not a
so
split.
So you would go at two different applications. So for your blackleg, you would be going early, usually around that cotyledon to 4-leaf stage, and then for sclerotinia, you're obviously trying to target that 50% flower as the optimum timing for that. This product has come out at such a perfect time in 2024. I think at harvest, people realized how severe the blackleg infestation was, and we were seeing a lot more blackleg than we had in the past. So kind of worked out in our favor to have this great timing for this registration. So we're adding blackleg to our label, which I think will be a great solution for Canadian farmers.
Any best management practices regarding the product so that growers get the maximum out of Maxentis for the 2025 season?
Yeah, for sure. When you're thinking, I'll kind of go over both cases. So when you're thinking blackleg, you do need to be applying early. Like I had mentioned, your cotyledon to 4-leaf stage. So that is, you're spraying a lot of black dirt, but that is the most detrimental time for that disease to infect. According to the Canola Council, they say that cotyledon to 2-leaf stage would be optimum, but I would recommend going in, if you're doing an early pass of herbicide, it could be tank mixed in there. And then a couple other things when you're thinking blackleg control, you obviously also want to be thinking about your variety of canola that you are growing, your crop rotation, your stubble management are some of the key factors there. And then when you're thinking canola for sclerotinia timing, you want to be going in at your 20 to 50% bloom. So when that crop is at its best bloom, because you're trying to protect those petals before they drop, and then that's when the infection would happen.
If growers want more information about Maxentis, where do they go?
Your best bet would be to go to our website, which is www.adama.com, and then you can just search Maxentis on there or any of our other products as well.
And of course, you can also talk to your local retailer. You'll walk into that retailer and say, "Hey, I want to hear about Maxentis for sure from ADAMA." Michaela, thanks so much for joining us here today on RealAg Radio for this product spotlight.
Yes, well, thank you for having me, and I wish all farmers best of luck in 2025.
Absolutely. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, right after this.
Find everything you need for outstanding weed control in your wheat and barley from the cross-spectrum herbicide experts at Corteva. Corteva is proud to offer a wide selection of cross-spectrum herbicides for maximum convenience, effective resistance management, and customized control of your toughest grassy and broadleaf weeds. No matter what kind of weed challenges you're experiencing, we've got the right fit for your farm. Visit corteva.ca to learn more.
At Vaterstad, we aim to be the world's leading partner for outstanding emergence. We're doing that through innovative tillage, planting, and seeding equipment that's optimized for your field conditions and soil types. We also offer industry-leading capacities to help you get the job done in shorter windows of time. It's all designed to give your crop the best start possible so you can maximize yields. Vaterstad, we look forward to growing together.
Lemkin Solitaire and Equalizer seeders and planters offer disruptive innovation like vertical banding, dry and or liquid onboard fertilizer, and obviously great prices. Awesome value at Lemkin. Go to lemkindemo.com for more information, and you can schedule a demo. So whether you're in the Corn Belt or you're farming on pulses and canola and wheat in that kind of rotation, Lemkin has a great product to put some seed in the ground. with the equalizer. Seeders and planters, awesome stuff. First was introduced to it at Agri-Technica, fantastic technology. Shaun Haney here with RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. We're at the Ad Farm Voice event and had a great time on the stage. And I'm actually joined right now by Dr. Terry Griffin of Kansas State University, who we had a nice hour-long fireside chat. Dr. Griffin, it's great to chat with you.
Yeah, I didn't even realize it was an hour long. I mean, I knew that was the schedule, but it went by pretty quickly. Shaun, it's good to be here.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground, which was honestly was a lot of fun. Really trying to encapsulate in 2025 the farmer's relationship with technology and how it's the quest for it to lead them to higher profitability and increased efficiency and productivity. I guess try to encapsulate a little bit for us in terms of what the farmer's going through from a technology perspective here in 25 and some of their decision making.
Yeah, so in economics, we do talk a lot about profitability. And one of the things I was trying to get across today was quality of life aspects. And going back to economics, profitability is an easier metric than another metric we like to talk about, and that's satisfaction or utility. And when we consider the farm operation not only as a business but as truly a family business, the rural household, and trying to optimize satisfaction and happiness across the rural household. Well, that's utility maximization, which is a step above profitability, although it's more difficult to measure these things, but they're still very important to consider. Ag technology, one of the examples, classic examples, is adding a cab to a tractor. So going from an open-air tractor to one that has a cab and air conditioning and maybe a XM radio, or back in the day, it's just been FM radio, was a tremendous improvement to quality of life. Even though it may have not been profitable in a net farm income perspective, it was still very much beneficial to the rural household. Fast forward to about 25 years ago, farmers started adopting or buying tractors that had automated guidance systems. It improved the quality of life. It also had efficiency benefits too, reduces skips and overlaps, saved on inputs, and made it where we could plant with a 12-row planter and harvest with an 8-row harvester without having to worry about mismatch and wide middles. Yeah. So I like to think in terms of economics as profit maximization as well as utility maximization or optimization.
Well, it's why in a lot of combines now we don't call it a cab, we call it a suite.
Sure.
It's got a buddy seat. It's got a cooler. It's creature comforts.
Yeah. They're independent, and sure. It does remind me though of labor things. If we have hired labor on the tractors, we may spend a little bit less on those creature comforts. But if it's the decision maker, person who bought the equipment, it makes a lot more sense for them to have those luxury, or not even luxury, quality of life.
Yeah. Hey, there was lots of times where a younger generation of the farm was arguing for, hey, let's upgrade to get that CD player in the tractor. Where Dad's like, no, you can listen to the radio, right? That kind of thing. So how do we measure that utility? Like, what does that calculation look like?
It's a lot more difficult. That's why we usually revert to profitability, because we can count dollars, we can count cents, we can count bushels and convert those into dollars. So there are some things that we can look at is, let's be frank, in some stressed relationships in the rural farm household, there are some family dynamics that may not be positive. And those are connected to quality of life aspects. And we can count those and we can measure the negative aspects of those. It's more difficult to measure the benefits when things are good, but when things are bad, we can see a cost.
Yeah. The adoption of technology, still all about amount of complexity and upfront cost?
A lot of complexity, especially when we're talking about the data side of technology. Automated guidance, automated section control, things that are automated removes the necessity for the human to be actively engaged in dealing with data. Those are readily adopted for obvious reasons. The other side of the coin with the yield monitor data, soils data, as applied data. It takes a lot more skill set to make use of that for decision-making purposes than without that data. So it useful and empowers the decision maker if they're poised to make use of it. And so today in 2025, when we think about technology adoption, we're buying new equipment, definitely, but if we're buying used equipment that's less than 5 years old, it probably has all of this technology on it. And so when we talk about adoption of technology, sometimes I use a proxy, and that is, do I pay the subscription fee to have some of these technologies activated on the equipment?
Is that why we're seeing so many subscription models out there now, because it lowers that upfront cost?
It makes the supply chain so much easier on the manufacturer. And we think about hybrid corn, and there was all the stacked genes were added to that at one point, and there was a reason for that. It just made supply chain management so much easier, and then you can do differential pricing to those who made use of it in different locations. Subscription fees are the same way. All the technology's there. We don't have to segregate on the assembly lines. Everything is the same, and we charge differentially by those who self-select by paying subscription fees.
And from the company's perspective, smooths out revenue. So stock market likes that.
Yes.
And the customer is a little bit more sticky.
Yes.
Right?
They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the subscription fee is almost pure profit. It doesn't cost really anything from the manufacturer's perspective anymore. $1,500 a year subscription fee, minimum expense to implement that.
Are there areas of ag tech that are fading or maybe haven't lived up to the hype as much as we thought? I don't know how to put that, but the bloom is off.
Sure. As a data guy, I'm really disheartened that yield monitors are not as readily used as what I would have hoped when I started my career in the 1990s. We had huge promises from the agricultural research as well as industry about, hey, this is going to be the future. And it is. It's just that it wasn't the future in 5 years or in 10 years. 25, 30 years later, less than half of planted acres have a combine harvester equipped with a GPS yield monitor. Yeah, and
that surprises me.
And our latest USDA report with the Economic Research Service, ERS, came out 2 years ago now, but it showed that automated guidance was 70% of planted acres in the United States, and yield monitors with a GPS, GNSS system, was half that.
Is that a testament to how many older combines are out? What's happening there?
I think it's a testament to the difference between automated and data intensive. So, I mentioned quality of life earlier, and I think everybody kind of understands that, and it makes life better. The opposite of that to me is human capital. And human capital is a good thing, but it requires a tremendous amount of effort by the person to invest in their own skills to become better at dealing with data. So once you do that, data will help empower that person, but it takes investment. Automated guidance doesn't really take human investment to make it work. It's more of a plug and play. So you got those two things at play. You got quality of life and human capital. So yield monitor data requires a whole bunch of human capital, and it doesn't really affect quality of life other than empowering the user to make better decisions.
Well, speaking of humans,
yes,
one of the things I'm not totally sold on is that we either have automation or even like one of these fancy Tesla robots I see videos of.
No.
Does it change our the amount of people we need working in the industry, or are they just going to be doing different things?
I think they're going to be doing different things. There's going to be a shift in labor, a shift in skill sets. The classic example is dairies. At one point we had a lot of manual milking, and then there was an adoption of automated milkers. So that didn't really displace a lot of people, but that just shifted the responsibility from milking cows to being technicians of automated milkers. Same can be said, if we fast forward into the future a little bit, we have, let's say, swarms of small autonomous robots doing tasks on a farm, then we will still have equipment operators, but they may be more skilled, instead of driving straight, they may be more skilled in deploying robots and repairing and maintaining them.
Well, you're obviously at Kansas State University. Are our colleges and universities doing enough to be ahead of some of this skill change?
Well, that's a good question. We do training. We do research on autonomy, and that's one of our main research endeavors. For instance, I'm working on economics of deploying swarms of autonomous robots to harvest cotton, which is it's a perennial grown as an annual, but we can harvest from the same plant multiple times during the harvest season. That makes a little bit more sense to deploy robots to that than some other grains. We will eventually. The classic example there is buggy whip manufacturers. And at first, when automobiles were being commercialized, the buggy whip manufacturers were a little concerned, but eventually there was automobile technical schools that were opening that taught mechanics, and then there was a shift in labor, let's say, from buggy whip manufacturers to automobile mechanics.
Interesting space. I got to ask you before we wrap up here, artificial intelligence. Yeah, it's like you can't go to a conference where someone's not talking about artificial intelligence. We're obviously in the early days of it. Where does it lead us?
So one of the things I think about with artificial intelligence, I've been asking a few of the computer science people who specialize in this, and some of them give a very long, complicated response, but a few of them will actually give me a short one-word answer, and it just says search. It's an efficient search, quick, efficient search. And my experience, I don't do research on artificial intelligence, but I use artificial intelligence in my research. So if I'm trying to build an economic model and I'm struggling with trying to solve it, or I'm trying to write some computer programming around the models, if I get stuck, sometimes I just go to one of the AI tools and say, how do I do this? And it gives me a pretty good response. It's hardly ever, never 100% correct, but it's 90-something%, and it gets me over the hump of what I'm trying to figure out. It gives me a hint where I, as a person, can more quickly, readily solve that problem I was looking at. Where are we going in the future? Well, 5 years ago, we moved very far in the last 5 years. Today we were in the meeting and we asked the group if they've ever used one of the AI tools, and it seemed like it was pretty ubiquitous across the whole room. They all had used it.
Yeah.
Or, and there's some that probably didn't admit to have using it, So it is uncanny the way how good it has worked for us so far. Yeah. The next 5 years, if we're at this trajectory, it's really no telling where it will be.
Yeah, and many think that the trajectory, even like we're just at the beginning. It's sort of like that Intel rule. What is it? Every 7 years, it's going to be fascinating.
It's going vertical almost.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dr. Griffin, it's been great to work with you today on the stage at this Farm Voice event with Ad Farm, and it's great to chat with you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you too, Shaun. Thanks.
Skip the trip. CCIA ships RFID approved tags straight to your door. Order online at tags.canadaid.ca, or you can call 877-909-2333 for beef cattle tags and pre-approved tags for cervids and goats. We're right back on RealAg Radio right after this.
If you're applying a low-rate N stabilizer, you might be falling for a losing strategy. Low-rate products promise great results, but may lack the potency of higher active ingredient concentrations, so great isn't always what you get. Don't put yield at risk. Put your trust in proven solutions. Anval Nitrogen Stabilizer, Super U Premium Fertilizer, and Tribune Nitrogen Stabilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. These products offer higher active ingredient concentrations imitator brands can't match. See the difference at defendyourn.ca.
The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com is your one-stop shop for everything a canola grower needs. Check out our free video series on YouTube for all the latest in canola agronomy, research, marketing, and more. Don't have time to watch? Download the podcast version of the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com or anywhere you download your podcasts. Stay on top of all things canola with the Canola School on RealAgriculture.com, brought to you by BASF and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. We're going to talk about maybe some potential spending cuts, restraints when it comes to the future of AAFC. But first I want to tell you about Lemkin Solitaire and Equalizer Seeders and Planters, how they offer disruptive innovation like vertical banding, dry or liquid fertilizer on board, and great prices. Go to lemkindemo.com for more information and request a demo. That's lemkindemo.com. Joining us right now is two people from CAPI. Up first, Tyler McCann, Managing Director at CAPI. Tyler, how are we doing?
I'm doing well, Shaun. Thanks for having us on today.
Yeah, hey, it's great to, it seems like we chat with you quite a bit. Also, which is great. Also joining us from CAPI is Elisabeta Lika. Elisabeta, it's great to have you.
Thank you, Shaun. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, okay, so Elisabeta, let's start with you. This report, Review, Restrain, Reset. It's kind of looking at the future of agricultural programming at AAFC. Talk about, I guess, the first why the report. Is there a whole bunch of, unnecessary spending and unnecessary programming, a bunch of waste, or what are we looking at here?
So the situation is a bit more nuanced than just about the quantity of spending on agriculture. So this report really offers a fresh perspective on the agriculture policy and spending. And one of the great motives for the report is really around the fact that agriculture spending is not just about numbers, but it's about impact, and how much we spend is important, but also how we spend, how the programs are designed, and how the funding is allocated is equally important. And farmers themselves from experience know that pouring money into a problem doesn't simply solve the problems in agriculture. Also, every 15 years or so, there is also a push to reshape government. The political debate with Carney and also Poliev around some potential budget cuts if they are elected means that agricultural spending will face scrutiny. Moreover, the sector is facing many structural systemic issues that go beyond the spending quantity. So all these motivations and factors were really some of the main reasons why CAPI started working on this report, which is not about looking at the potential review as a threat, but more as a way to learn from past lessons and how to move forward with recommending a path to review, to restrain, but to better allocate the funding to agriculture, make the system better work for everybody, including farmers.
Now, government receives a lot of suggestions from stakeholders, a lot of requests from stakeholders, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Is there typically like a set of filters or criteria that the government typically uses to evaluate whether or not that spending is inside their parameters or worthwhile or predictably produces a high impact?
So, as I mentioned, this is not an unprecedented scenario. So, agriculture sector has gone through these reviews before, and we looked at some other previous historical reviews, including the 1995 program review and also the 2012 deficit reduction action plan. And the historical economic and political events that occurred that led to those reviews really indicate that there is a six test criteria or methodology that the government can use and should use to really filter all the programs, the agricultural portfolio. And no programs should be off the table. No programs should be left really entrenched. And is this filter that guarantees that the outcome will benefit the sector and will make every dollar count when it comes to the spending for agriculture and for farmers?
Now, Tyler, I guess there's some of the audience going to be like, whoa, wait a minute here. Is CAPI suggesting like a Doge-like program to, cut staff immensely, cut programming considerably, trying to there's essentially waste in the system? That's not what you're suggesting here?
No, absolutely not, Shaun. And I think it's important to set first the context that it's not CAPI that's putting this on the table. Right now, the two leading candidates for prime minister in our election have both committed to cutting government spending. And so this is something that's going to happen. We're kind of due for it once in a generation. I think that there's some similarities in the United States where they've recognized the need to reduce spending, but what we're suggesting in our report is that we need a thoughtful approach that's well understood, that's transparent, that identifies kind of where there are priorities, where there is need. And clearly, that's not what we're seeing in the United States today. So I think it's really important to separate what we see south of the border to the opportunity in Canada to do this in a way that makes spending in the ag portfolio better and more responsive. And I think the other thing that we've heard as we were writing this report is in the context of these US pressures, should you wait and do this later? And what we try and say is that no, we think that actually the pressure on making sure every dollar is spent effectively inside the ag portfolio is greater now than it was before. This is the time to make sure that when we're investing in risk management or R&D or market development or internal services, that we're getting the best possible impact and outcome of that spending. And I think that the reality is probably everybody in agriculture has got some examples of where we're not today.
Are there examples in the report that you identified where you think we need to take a closer look here?
Yeah, but we did. So Elisabeta talked about the tests that were used in the 90s. And so we applied those tests on a couple of different areas of federal spending. So one of them was on-farm environmental programming. And we kind of take that through the test. The federal government over the last 10 years has really pushed Ag Canada into the space. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on it before. And kind of our view is that does not pass what's referred to as the federalism test, that the provincial governments have in the past led on-farm environmental programming, and they should continue to lead on it. So Agriculture Canada should get out of that space, and the provinces should lead. It's not to say that on-farm environmental programming is not important, that it's not a good investment. The point is that's not an investment that should be being driven by the federal government.
Are there areas that you identified where we should be spending more?
Clearly, trade market access is something that we've identified as an area where that is clearly within the federal government's jurisdiction. It clearly responds to a very pressing need. And so there's an opportunities to invest more there. On R&D and innovation, we point out that there is maybe some investment potential to do more, but there's a question around the effectiveness test. Are we getting the results that we need out of there? So it's not just about, in that case, spending less or more, but how do we really look at that and spend differently? And I think that's, again, where we try and separate what we think should happen in Canada from what we're seeing in other countries. We need a far more thoughtful, comprehensive look at what we're doing, how we're doing it, and the impacts that it gets.
Now, both of you have alluded to these 6 criteria that were being applied in the 90s. When did we stop using them?
So when the Liberals in the 90s were really trying to struggle with this massive deficit at the time, they were very aggressive and they looked at every dollar of spending and they made everything that the federal government do pass the test. That's very different than the Harper government, but what happened in 2012, where they basically said to departments, you need to cut 10% of spending. And departments could use kind of different processes to get a 10% haircut. In the 90s, Transport Canada's budget was cut by over 60% as a result of it. Like, it radically reshaped the department. And so our view is that this should not be about a target. This should not be about, 10 or 50 or, 60% cuts. This should be about, is the money serving a purpose? And is it working? And is it getting the impacts that we need? And that's a far more thoughtful approach than just saying we want to save 10%.
Elisabeta, how do you measure the impact? What does that look like?
That's a good question. That's not a straightforward answer for sure. So, as Tyler mentioned, this 6-test methodology, answering all those questions, does the program address a real need today? Could the private sector handle this better? Are we avoiding duplicated efforts across the different levels of the government? And what is the right level of government to handle it? Are we using the best tools available? And crucially, how can we afford doing this way? Will partially help answer that question. But definitely, impact means different things to different stakeholders included in this process. And this is one of the main objectives of the report as well, to really pull in the sector and to make the sector actively engage in this process, to proactively shape how these reviews should unfold and to ensure that the Canadian agriculture grows stronger. So to make sure that the outcomes that are delivered through these programs are the outcomes that the government intends to deliver, but also those that the sector is looking to get out of the programs.
And Shaun, I think it's important to highlight that one of the reasons we did this report is because often these processes happen behind the scenes and are not transparent, and they don't engage the sector. And what we find out at the end of the day is what the decisions government have made were. And we think that the sector needs to be more thoughtful and needs to realize these things are going to happen. This is effectively inevitable at this point in time, with both Carney and Trudeau calling for something like this to happen. And we should be prepared, and we should be thoughtful, and we should understand, and we should be able to take some positions around, here's what spending reduction could look like, and here's how we do it thoughtfully. So let's not let this happen behind closed doors. Let's have a more transparent discussion about it.
Are departments getting out ahead of this? Like, what are we hearing? Are departments... Like, this is not just an agricultural thing. I would imagine there's other government departments that are going through this kind of thought process. And are they getting ahead of it, thinking that, okay, you know what, whether it's a Poilievre or it's a Carney government, we're actually prepared, and here's what we would suggest, or is that?
Yeah. So I don't think it's about getting ahead of it, because I think the senior leaders in government wait and see what the outcome of the election is. But clearly, there's a lot of work being done right now to understand. This is one of the things. When government goes into caretaker convention, it actually gives the senior leadership inside the bureaucracy time to do some of this pre-planning and thinking. So we know that they're thinking about some of these issues. We know they're looking at the language that the leaders, the parties are using, and they're trying to think through what that means in their portfolio. So I expect that, and I expect that it will happen quickly if it does. That's one of the things we say in the report, is that you should do this quickly. You should do this kind of as fast as you can afterwards. And I expect government departments are getting ready for that. Again, they may be spending some time trying to decode what spend less, invest more means from a Mark Carney government, but I'm not sure if they've got good answers on that yet, but that's part of what they're doing today. Well,
we're all going to find out very shortly, whoever is the victor in this upcoming federal election at the end of the month. Okay, Elisabeta, it's been great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, Shaun. Thank you.
Tyler, all the best.
Yep, thanks, Shaun.
Okay, we've been talking to Tyler McCann and Elisabeta Lika from CAPI. Oh, I should ask Tyler, where do we get this report? If somebody wants to read it, where do they go?
Absolutely. Please go to the CAPI website. You can find us on Google, social media channels, whatnot. When you're there, sign up for our newsletter so you can get these reports as soon as they're released.
Great stuff. Super interested in what your thoughts are there when it comes to that CAPI report, in terms of areas where the government potentially could reduce spending. And there has to be areas where, you know what, if we could really improve the impact of what we're doing, if we had just a little bit more budget in this area, and there's going to be some give and take. And listen, I don't care whether it's a Carney government, a Poilievre government, there is a push here for reduced spending across the board, not just in agriculture. If you think that agriculture in either situation is somehow going to be able to avoid spending reductions in the next budget cycle, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I just don't think it's the case. We'd love to hear from you. Send me an email on anything you heard today. We had Ryan Jesperson from the Ryan Jesperson Show, Real Talk. That was great to talk about the election. Make sure you tune in to his show tomorrow on YouTube. I'm going to be a guest talking about the idea of Fortress North America. And I would love your feedback on anything. Just don't look at your RSPs or your 401ks. That's all I got to say. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or you can, of course, call the Real Ag feedback line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio. Chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this RealAg Radio episode, brought to you by hard-performing carbine insecticide from FMC. Carbine insecticide hits aphids hard with effective, selective, extended control. It also has activity on lygus and tarnished plant bugs. Ask your retailer or visit ag.fmc.com/CA today.